Welcome to the All Financial Hour podcast with Steve All.
More than 48 million Americans are caregivers of older loved ones. They're doing everything from preparing meals, paying bills, assisting with medication, and, even performing nursing tasks. A recent study found that they're also spending more than $7,000 annually in out-of-pocket cost. And I guess, Steve, this is something that nobody wants, to leave to their spouses, kids, family members. But what can we do now while preparing for retirement so that this doesn't happen, the burden doesn't fall on them?
That's probably the hardest thing for us to talk about is long-term care planning is the one. Why? Because most people say, this is not going to happen to me. I know that there's a large percentage of people that will need it, but I'm part of that 30 to 35% that's not going to need it. So it does come around with there. And then you have people like myself where my mom and dad went through it. My mom did. And for me, it's one of those reasons why I got in the industry, because when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was the idea around, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. And I wasn't in the industry on the retail side at that time. My parents had gone to guys that just sold them products. So they didn't really have a plan put together. And our long-term care plan was about like some of the long-term care plans that some of you all out there listening have. And I'm going to say everybody out there has a long-term care plan. And I know somebody, it just went through their head, well, I don't have a plan. And I said, yeah, you do. You've got the same one my parents had. What asset are we going to sell of mom and dad's to keep mom in the facility once she went in? Just circle it. Just open up your portfolio and circle that ad that if you or your spouse goes into a facility, what asset will you sell first? Because that was the plan that my parents had to use. Now, we have different options out there that are available today. We have traditional long-term care insurance. I think our industry has done a very poor job of presenting that to people. Why? Because we look at it and we get an average, like, okay, in the St. Louis market, in a very fancy facility, it's going to cost you $10,000 to $12,000 per month. And then when we bring the numbers back to people, they almost say the exact same thing. Steve, that's too expensive. And it's the reason why it is because we bought a Cadillac. We don't have to have it all covered. We might be able to get by with the VW, just bring some of those costs down so that it's not as expensive. But the problem with traditional long-term care insurance that upsets a lot of people, it's use it or lose it. And as I stated, if you use your traditional long-term care insurance, it will be the cheapest insurance you'll ever buy. If you don't use it, it'll probably be the most expensive insurance that you'll ever buy. So the industry shifted a little bit and they came out with alternative ways that we could use to help cover that long-term care exposure. There are life insurance policies that are out there that have chronic illness riders in it. Those chronic illness riders says if I can't do two of those activities of daily living, that I can get part of the death benefit early. All the chronic illness riders are a little bit different, so we have to look at that. So it's important to go. There are annuities out there that have enhanced benefits that if you have a chronic illness, can't do a couple of those activities of daily living, that the benefits can kick in and help pay for that. So there is a way to offset some of those costs because, like I said, everybody's got a plan. What asset are you going to sell? For me, that's what drove me to the industry. I looked at it and I said, Steve, you're helping business people and you're not helping people like your parents. What's wrong with that? That's also why I believe that planning is the most important thing. Not all of these things will happen, but we have to look and plan for it. If it happens, how are we going to cover it? So if you're looking at it and saying, hey, I would like to hear some options around how I could cover this when or if it happened to myself or my spouse, give us a call now. Ask for the long-term care analysis. Let's look at how you could possibly offset that cost so that every dollar of that care won't come out of your pocket. Give me a call now. Allow myself and my team to help walk you through this experience.
Many of us, we sit back and we literally daydream of when we will retire. What are we going to do in retirement? Well, there's an article in Kiplinger magazine that talks about the potential obstacles that can threaten our financial security along the way. Steve, how can you help us combat some of these?
Well, let's look at the one. I think the one that most people will at least think about is longevity risk. I'm going to outlive my money. So that's one of the biggest things. One of the greatest fears is I'm going to run out of money in retirement, and I don't want to be a burden to my family, my kids, or anything like that. Well, one of the ways that we can do that is we talked about a little bit earlier on the show, is delay taking my Social Security. Well, wait a minute, Steve, I might have to spend the other assets. Yes, but every year I delay taking my Social Security, it increases by 8%. And that's very important when we talk about spousal benefits. When one of the two is no longer there, what amount stays? The amount of the higher Social Security stays. So it might not be necessarily for just me. It could be for me and my spouse. So longevity risk. How do I create an income stream that I cannot outlive? The annuity with an income rider gives me that guaranteed income from an insurance company that I cannot outlive. I like to say, if you think of it as a privately funded pension plan, is about the best thing. The good thing about it, if it's an annuity, if I prematurely pass, the assets goes on to my heirs. It does not just go back to the company. The other thing that most people don't even think about when it comes to retirement planning is inflation. Now, the last couple years, it's come back into focus, because we hit 6 to 9% inflation. So people are now thinking about it a little bit more. But we start to look at these things and say, what's it going to cost? With just a 3% inflation, costs are going to double in 24 years. So if I'm spending $5,000 a month now, in 24 years, I'm going to be spending $10,000 a month. And if I'm spending 10 now, it's going to be 20. People say, Steve, there's no way I'll ever spend either 10 or 20. And I looked at him, I said, if you'd have went back 24 years ago, did you think you'd be spending $5,000 a month now?
Yeah, you don't really have a choice. Inflation is what it is,
Inflation is there, and that's only at 3%. So if it's higher than that, and we look at it to the point, a lot of the things that we need when we get older, healthcare, those are increasing at a lot more than 3%. So inflation, we can't put everything that we have into cash. We still have to have some market exposure. We don't have to be crazy about it, but putting everything into the drawer or CDs or things like that, we won't keep up with inflation. So that's one of the battles. Taxes. Taxes is, I believe, the greatest risk that we're going to have in the future. Remember years ago when they said, oh, don't worry about it. You're going to be a lower tax bracket when you hit retirement. Now, I'm finding out that a lot of people, that's not a true statement. Most people have adapted a lifestyle that they've become with. They saved all their money in IRAs and 401ks, and now they're having to pull the money out to meet their lifestyle needs. Well, money coming out of an IRA account or a 401k account is ordinary income. So I'm going to be probably in the same tax bracket as I was when I was working. And then when those things called required minimum distributions kick in, I might get into a higher tax bracket. So for me, I believe that, tax planning is probably the most important thing that you could do. Because if you have too much money in your IRAs and 401ks, it's going to subject you to this tax rate risk in the future. And people always ask, what do you mean when you say too much money? The average 401k is around $200,000 to $250,000. So I'm saying if you've got an extra large 401k between $250,000 and $750,000, depending on your other incomes, pensions and Social Security, lifestyle, you might spend those assets down during your lifetime. If you've got a double X, between $750,000 and $1.5 million, chances are you are not going to spend down all those assets. You will pass a tax time bomb on to your kids. Depending on how many children you have is the effect from that. And if you've got a triple X, 1.75 or above, we're looking at a tax time bomb going down to the kids. And I've had people look at me and say, Steve, I wasn't planning on leaving any money to the kids. I look at them and say, would you rather leave it to your children or would you rather leave it to the IRS?
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank God nobody's ever said they'd rather leave it to the IRS. So if you're in that situation, because as I say, reducing or eliminating taxes is the best thing that we can do for successful retirement. And we only have 2 more years of the Trump tax cuts. They expire December of 2025.
Thanks for listening to the All Financial Hour podcast.
Insurance products are offered through the insurance business All Insurance Group, LLC, AIG. All Financial Group, LLC is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through Impact Partnership Wealth, LLC, IPW, a registered investment advisor. IPW does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by All Insurance Group, LLC, AIG are not subject to investment advisor requirements. IPW and All Insurance Group, LLC, AIG are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. All Financial Group, LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by All Financial Group, LLC.